everyone. I'm so glad you joined us for this panel discussion. We'll be talking about simple steps that you can take to create a strong business. I'm your moderator, Laura Redmond. I run an accounting firm based in the San Francisco Bay Area. This is our 16th year. And I'm the co-founder of an app called Arrow Workflow. And I've spent many, many years writing and teaching QuickBooks Online certification for Intuit. Our panel discussion today is on the accountant track. So that means that the audience is made up of accounting professionals who are searching for simple business strategies to help your firm grow and thrive. I've been attending QuickBooks Connect every year since it started, and I know that some of you are really advanced, really experienced and knowledgeable, and that some of you are brand new to this. So this is a great place for you to learn, and it's a great community. We all share with each other. So welcome to everyone. I'm going to introduce each of our panelists and let them tell you about the work that they do. Starting with Jenny Moore, Practice Ignition. Hello, Jenny. Tell us about the work that you do in our profession.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Laura. Yes, so my name is Jenny Moore. I am the head of accounting for Practice Ignition, and I also have my own practice as well, which is more details. Ironically, 16 years in the making as well, Laura, so kindred spirits there. And part of my passion is to research financial technology to help accounting professionals really streamline their organization, which is mainly my role here as the head of accounting with Practice Ignition.
Thank you. Next, we have Monty Bernard of Expensify. Monty, tell us about your role at Expensify.
Hey, Laura. Hey, everyone. Super excited to be here. I wear a handful of hats, but around the office, I'm primarily known as the voice of Expensify, particularly leading the charge and co-hosting our podcast with our CEO, David Barrett. Marketing materials, creating content, a lot of fun stuff there. I also work closely with our approved and global guides programs to effectively onboard thousands of new users each week.
And Pete Potos of Bill.com. Pete, tell us what you do at Bill.com.
Hi, yes, thank you, Laura. I am a strategic account manager, so I work with some of our largest partners, and then I have another role as client accounting services, a strategic advisor. So basically that means I've been helping firms build client accounting services practices for over 10 years. And I've been in the profession for about 25 years, working with CPA firms. When my role at Creative Solutions, Thomson Reuters, and CPA.com before this. And so helping lots of firms, and I've seen them from their very small stages to the point where they've gotten so big and they've acquired other firms. And so it's been fun watching the profession and these partners who become friends over the years grow and build their practices. So
very nice. So thank you all for being here on our panel today. And as you can see, everyone here has worked in or closely with accounting firms. And so we know firsthand that running an accounting firm is very rewarding, but also complex. And for many of us, that requires a mindset from that of the practitioner who is performing the services for our clients, doing the work, to that of a leader managing a business, managing an accounting firm. And we know a business is quite different from a job. A business needs this framework, some kind of structure of systems and procedures to avoid chaos. And that framework is what will help us all balance adding new clients or adding new staff or both without losing our minds and losing control over the quality of the service delivery and the profits for the firm. So if we can, we want to build that framework to be scalable so that we can grow. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's discuss some of those strategies that can help accounting firms implement and add structure to their firm so they can grow and they can thrive without losing control. And we'll start with the first simple step would be to define your firm's services and your firm's clients. So what do you do and who do you do it for, right? I'm talking about like make a list of the services you provide so that you're not just doing whatever somebody's asking you to do, and maybe it's not even your niche. So do you do recurring services? Are you paying bills, expense reports, payroll? What kind of services are you providing? Tax, audit. And maybe you have one-time projects. Maybe you do QuickBooks Online implementations, things like that. And then define what kind of client you provide that service for or want to provide it for, and then you can market and sell it. So let's talk about everything related to that. We'll start with Pete. Right. What if you're not sure who your target client is?
Yeah, great question. So, when you first start out, you're really, depending on the stage, but you feel like you almost want to take on anyone, right? And but it makes sense to kind of step back and start by taking a look at your current client list and consider which ones are your favorites and if those clients have anything in common that makes them more desirable. So knowing your target client helps you determine whether your service delivery menu fits your desired clientele. And then I like to ask the question, let's say you were only going to take on one more client the next year, or you were about to retire, like what industry would you pick, or what type of client would it be if you were only going to take on one more, right? And the point of that question is like, what are you passionate about? Who do you like working with? I mean, if you're a foodie, do you like going to restaurants? Then focus on restaurants if you feel passionate about that. So I think it's important, given the work that we do is very hard and you get stuck in it. You want to at least be working with those that you like to work with. So
yeah, it helps you enjoy what you do, right?
Right.
So Jenny, is like any client a good client for a new accounting?
No, absolutely not. Right, Laura? I think of the early days of starting my own practice when I felt like every client was a good client because they had a checkbook. It's really important to get really specific and know that not every client is a good fit for you. And that could be for many reasons. It could be your niche. It could be your speciality. It could be even something as basic as personality. And at more details, what I learned from many mistakes, many errors, is I really had to define who I was working for in order for me to scale my business and who I wanted to focus on, because we'll get talking to this a little bit further on, but everything else you do in your practice really relates to who you're working for. And if anyone's interested, I always talk about my dragon methodology. That is how I pick my clients right to this day. And it's something that I keep very true to me. And, similar to what Pete was saying, you really need to think about almost fictitiously what that ideal client is and really start strategizing your digital experience to speak directly to them to make sure you're attracting them in this new digital age of attracting clients.
Yeah, that's so true. So Monty, what makes Expensify suited to firms that are on a growth trajectory?
Great question. First, I wanted to circle back to Pete's comment about being passionate about your clients, about what type of client you want to work with. That passion, that aspect of your job is really what kind of gets you up in the morning to do what you want to do. And so at the most basic level, time is going to be the greatest commodity for any company on a growth trajectory. We don't want you being bogged down with doing all the, rigmarole, mundane day-to-day tasks that you don't like to do. We want you to focus on the types of work in your job that you're passionate about at the base level. So time and how to utilize it from start to finish, an Expensify account can be set up in about an hour, not days, not weeks, an hour. The less amount of time your employees, your firm is spending on Expensify, the more successful we see our platform. We will aim to pretty much automate all functions that we used to spend, hours on. There were things, just necessary evils that we used to spend our days and weeks on. But now, we can automate and take care of that. we fully believe that the more humans that get involved in a process, the more errors will occur. So again, we try to take that out of the equation. The whole point of Expensify is to set it up, have it, but not really need to use it, if that makes sense.
Jenny, what's the first thing a new business owner should do or could do to get clients?
Yeah, that's really important. Whether it's your own firm and you're looking to scale forward, or you're even helping clients through that process, I'm a big advocate for the digital strategy. So being able to make sure that you have a digital strategy, a digital footprint, and that's more than just having a website and just having a LinkedIn profile. It's about using those different channels to weave a web of stories and services and solutions you solve to advocate for your brand. It really is the megaphone, the big microphone that is now allowing you to be able to be heard. So I hear this from so many people in the accounting industry. They put the digital strategy last because it feels cumbersome and awkward. I know when I was taking my education for accounting, we had one marketing course. It is so vital. And if you're looking at securing those higher value, lower churn clients, it really involves taking the time to invest in that digital strategy and speaking to them directly through your media assets and your posts.
Yeah, that's so true. And that really is an example of, we don't feel natural necessarily at marketing and sales because we're accounting professionals, but that's an example of stepping outside of the client work to run a business. You have to do marketing and sales now. So, Pete, what would you say is the most effective marketing tool that you have seen firms use?
Yeah. So I believe that the most effective tool, and I use this myself, for small firms and small businesses, is to use the customer testimonial. So if you've had a recent success with a client and they're just raving about you and sending you text messages or emails, like the first thing you want to do is just say, hey, I'm so glad we were able to help you. It just makes me so happy. And it would mean a lot to me if you would be open to a quick video testimonial, just, maybe a conversation that you and I have that we could record and then put it up on our website. Right. And, if in most cases, they'll say, yes, absolutely. And my gosh, you've saved us so much time. You've been able to help us spend more time with our family, or you've given us peace of mind that this stuff is getting done right. I mean, that is just great stuff for prospective clients who will be able to make a personal connection with you before they even meet you. Right. And so I think there's nothing more powerful. Plus, your clients want to see you succeed. They want you to stay in business so that they can continue to help you grow, so you can continue to help them grow. Right. So it's definitely a win-win, and probably the easiest thing to do.
That's great. And I know I'm reading testimonials when I'm looking at a new service or solution, because I want to make sure that it's legit and that what other people have to say about it. So on this strategy that we're talking about, remember, we're talking about defining your services. What do you do as a firm? And then marketing and selling it. So part of that is like pricing. So Jenny, I want to ask you specifically about Practice Ignition, how it helps accounting firms who are maybe letting go of that hourly billing model and moving to whether it's fixed fee or value pricing, whichever, but they're presetting the dollar amount on the engagement. So tell us about Practice Ignition, where that's involved.
Yeah, absolutely. So using Practice Ignition within my own firm, it helps with both pricing strategies, whether it's a deposit prior to work being done, maybe an hourly basis, but the most common one that our industry is moving towards is the monthly reoccurring revenue model. And regardless of which strategy you use, Practice Ignition is a great solution. But speaking to my experience of using it for my own firm, what it really helps is being able to streamline what your value is. And value will always be subjective. Just looking at the price of airlines can be subjective for your next trip. But really coming down to what has been your experience in delivering these services is a great way to be able to determine what your value is. And one great way that Practice Ignition does that is it helps advocate for your value. It's not just like a standalone engagement process. It's also a selling tool that I also have some of my clients go, wow, that was a really neat thing. That was a really great experience. And yeah, it's an experience. And what I've come to learn from using Practice Ignition, again, long before my role of being head of accounting for Practice Ignition, is that this is really the first step at taking this engagement, taking this route with the client. And so when we have our own workflows as a practice owner really tight, really polished, we're having some really nice engagements. We have the new proposal editor where people can pick different packages based on their needs and budgets. We can easily embed a Loom video. I love it because I'm able to take the scariness away from engagements and bring in my personality and my brand. The other thing, of course, selfishly that it does for me as a practice owner is it keeps the invoices tight, syncs back to QuickBooks Online, payments are reconciled, and also the integrations into platforms like Intuit Practice Management where we can keep our scope creep. Did I just say that? Absolutely. Where we can keep scope creep tight and make sure that we're not working for free and that we're compliant.
Okay, so Monty, what do you say to those who are reluctant to add another app and pay another subscription fee? And by that, I don't mean that they have 5,000 set up, but I think over the past decade, we've seen as we all move to the cloud that people think, I've got my one accounting app. I use QuickBooks Online. What do I have to have another app now? And they seem nervous about that. So tell us, what are your thoughts on that, Monty?
Yeah. I mean, we've all been there, whether it be a new subscription like TV service or whether it be something to help grow your business. It can definitely be a little scary. It can definitely be that, oh gosh, another one. But at the end of the day, at Expensify, we love Intuit because you guys intentionally developed QuickBooks Online as a platform to plug in apps that perform different functions. I mean, this way QBO can act as a core general ledger and doesn't have to do everything because, frankly, not everybody needs everything. At the end of the day, again, there's almost always a significant savings in time and error created by manual processes. I mean, that's just fact. People make errors, people make mistakes. Once you communicate this to business owners, I mean, they'll understand that subscription fees are worth the value added by the automation. Improved process and framework, those provided by these apps, I mean, they'll pay dividends at the end of the day in time and productivity.
Yep, that is so true. Moving on to our second strategy, we've defined what our services are in the firm and who we sell them to. And the second thing we want to talk about now is to deliberately select your tech stack. Don't leave this up to the whim of every different client engagement you encounter. Determine how your firm will perform those services and what apps the firm will use. Look for integrations and automation. Jenny, can you recommend apps that a startup accounting firm needs?
Yeah, absolutely. So, stemming on my own experience of having a firm, changing it from a paper-based desktop platform to an online experience like QuickBooks Online, we really had to practice what we preach. And so one of the first things I would look at if I were starting an accounting firm right now would be to look at financial management systems like QuickBooks Online, because it is really the single source of truth, the house of accounting data. And then expand on that experience for your customers with a select few apps that you would choose to specialize in. So for instance, one of our pillars with my firm is e-commerce. Well, with e-commerce, what we're doing is we're really integrating well with different types of data importing apps. We also require receipt capture applications like Dex. We also use Expensify for a client. The other thing you want to look at is how do you eliminate eliminate other paper issues, which would be paper checks. Well, you can eliminate that with Bill.com. So as you look at these preliminary pain points of eliminating paper, that's how you can create a core app stack. And then as you become comfortable with it and are able to articulate that better to the customer, then expand your knowledge into some of the other niches that are out there. And perhaps one of them is e-commerce, like it is for our firm.
Yeah. Pete, what is the easiest way to increase the perceived value of your services to your potential clients compared to the status quo or to your competitors?
Yeah, absolutely. So ultimately, you want to think about the value of your services from your client's perspective versus how long it takes for you to do the work. So we've all heard the term measure what matters. So in this regard, how quickly you get the information to your client means more to them. So this is where technology comes into play. If you can introduce workflow automation tools and integrations that will deliver your product faster, then the perceived value is much higher compared to getting it a month later. And so, I use this analogy of like, would you prefer to drink milk the day it came out of the cow or a month and a half later when firms are typically getting financials to them? And so, the answer is the fresher, the better. Although I use that analogy in Wisconsin once, and they're like, well, we call that cheese here. But for most of us, though, it's really information. The more valuable, the faster it gets to them. And so having capabilities in a solution that can reduce the amount of human touch, or it's sitting in an inbox. We here at Bill.com, we have automation tools that are reading the document for you. It's identifying the vendor. It's splitting documents apart. It's assigning the approvals automatically. And then, you can even set things up to auto pay as well too. So there's lots of things that we've done to help you get that, financial statement out as soon as possible where it's the most valuable.
Monty, speaking of value and all the different solutions at our fingertips today, how is Expensify different from other products in the market? What makes Expensify unique?
Definitely. There's a handful of aspects I'll bring up. I just wanted to mention that I think Jenny and Pete are both hitting the nail on the head. I particularly like the preliminary pain points for eliminating paper. I love that. That's absolutely fantastic. And Pete hit the nail on the head as well with the less amount of people actually touching the receipts, touching the assets. The faster it's there, the more valuable it is, the faster it's handled. I couldn't agree more. And when it comes to expense reporting software, from my experience, most, but not all, but most fintech platforms are created to be more of an admin first and user second experience, which at first glance, of course, totally makes sense. The gears of the back office in a company, they need to turn to make the company work. But the majority of the market share for expense software is still taken up by Excel, believe it or not. In 2021, people are still utilizing spreadsheets to handle their expense reporting. It's kind of a silly thing, in my opinion. But again, if it works, it works. But the most dangerous phrase ever uttered was, "But we've always done it this way."
Right.
And that says a lot to begin with. So there's one example right there. What happens is a company may spend a ton of time, a ton of money building out a solution that checks all the administrative boxes. But when it comes to actual user adoption, user execution, getting them to comply with your workflows can be a lot like pulling teeth, because quite frankly, it just wasn't built for them. It wasn't built to be easy for them at all. In a nutshell, at Expensify, we know that doing your expenses sucks. It's not fun. It's not something you look forward to as a submitter or even as an admin processing them at the end of the week, at the end of the month. So we built our platform to be user first, which at the end of the day, helps you, again, achieve those core purposes: honing better adoption, ease of use on both ends, submitter and admin, and of course the accountant team as well, and getting you every receipt you need to close those books at the end of the month.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you're making it kind of fun now. Okay, so our first strategy, we're talking about defining your services, who your clients are. You know what you sell. You know what you sell as a firm. Second one, we talked about picking your tech stack. Let's go to our final third strategy, and that is defining how you're going to do things. More so than just what you're going to sell and what tech stack, but really creating procedure guides or checklists, or even just some communication within the team about how you do what you do. Like, not just we run payroll. That could mean that you're going to do it all different ways, even if you've picked a certain tech stack, but really getting into how your firm does what they do. And then there are so many great certification programs that are available. So I would say to definitely get your staff certified so that they're experts, and you can use that for a lot of marketing. And then start delegating all the work you have, your client work, to your staff. So Jenny, talk to me about, how do you scale a business?
Yeah, if I were to break it down, we call it the triple P approach. And if you're wanting to scale your business, keeping these three P's in mind are really what will do it. And one is to focus on your people. You can only scale if you let go and delegate. You don't want to be working in your practice. You want to be working on your practice. So having people is really important to carry that out. However, as I learned very early in my journey to scaling, is people are not mind readers as much as we like to think they are. So in order to solve that problem, you need to write out your processes. And that's where apps like Arrow can really come in well, because you're keeping that consistency of that deliverable to your client. What you don't ever want is your client saying, well, that was done different this month, or something was dropped, or something was missed, or maybe there's some scope creep going on and your client's asking you for a bit more, which leads you to those platforms. And so it's not just enough to write it out and, have a series of Zoom training calls. You also need the technology to bring it together. Within my firm, we have a fully remote team. I have 3 team members I have never met face to face. And the only way I am able to do what I do with Practice Ignition, stay sane, and also run a practice, is by following the triple P approach, by having really good technology for my workflows and my engagements, really strong processes. It's like the recipe of how we're going to do the work, and some really awesome people.
Okay, I love that. People, process, and technology.
Platforms. You got it. No worries.
That's so true. So
we need to make t-shirts. We'll make some t-shirts. It's okay.
Yeah. And it's so important in that the piece where you move from practitioner to running a firm, building a firm, growing a firm, and thriving, is because you've got to delegate the work now. You can't do it all anymore. So you have to communicate that. And that can cause a lot of bottlenecks, because you kind of, as the firm owner or partner or manager, can be the one everyone's waiting on if you don't figure out a way to pass the information on and delegate it well. So Pete, where do you find bottlenecks when you're trying to scale an organization?
Yeah. So to Jenny's point on people, I've seen over the years where firms will get stalled out on scaling their organization in 2 places, and that is onboarding and then business development or sales. Right? So oftentimes firms will rely on one person to onboard all of their clients, and then that person leaves. So you're 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? Or the other way around, right? And so you've got to have a succession plan and a growth plan to fully support your future needs and make sure that you're supported there, because that's a linchpin, if you will. Then the other case where I see slow growth is not having someone dedicated to sales full time. Right. So I'm a recovering CPA turned salesperson, and I imagine that for, most firms, when they went to school to become accountants and they didn't think they were, extroverted type people or never really took a sales class. And so, so that is a skill you have to either develop or hire or outsource, right? And you you um, you can do it yourself by taking training, get a training method. I'm a student of spin selling. I like that. It's very methodical, linear approach to doing things and, moving people through the sales cycle. And it can give you some confidence, that you're following something, and accountants are really good at that. Or you hire someone that loves to talk to people and loves selling and has had that experience. But ultimately, someone needs to have the quota, if you will, or the goal for your growth. And you can't be the delivery person and the salesperson. It's hard to do both.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. Monty, we have talked about this important tech stack, and now we're talking about defining the processes around it. And I mentioned a bit ago that getting your staff certified in it is so important, and it gives them that expertise. So I know Bill.com and Expensify have training programs. A lot of Intuit's customers are accountants. Can you tell us how your Expensify program, Expensify approved, works for accountants?
Absolutely. And to Pete's point, kind of taking a piggyback off that about finding those different scale stallers where you're not able to onboard and bring on new people, new clients to really scale at that. That's one of the biggest, and I completely agree. And to combat that, we designed our approved program for accountants who want to grow their business and scale successfully. Over the years, we've spoken to thousands of accountants at conferences, at road shows, or having them just write directly into us. And the problem they all faced was that they struggled to manage clients' multiple different submission styles, so to speak. I'll put it politely there, of expenses. I'm sure everyone listening today has plenty of horror stories they could talk about getting shoe boxes full of receipts, envelopes full of receipts, what have you. It could go on and on. You can only do so many of those before you want to pull your hair out. So we did a study with Yahoo not so long ago, and we found that, unsurprisingly, admins roughly spend around 1 hour per employee per month on an individual's expenses. So that's some pretty basic math there. 5 employees, 5 hours a month. 40 employees, well, that's an entire week time dedicated to something that could be spent on something much, much more productive. And frankly, that time sink alone, that could prevent you from growing. Those are 40 hours, plain and simple, that could be spent on, again, much better uses of your time. So we developed our platform to streamline this, plain and simple. That solution being approved policies. So what you're able to do in a nutshell is you're able to build distinct, customizable, autonomous policies for each client, invite their respective submitters and admins, and then you'll be able to work with them to fully customize the rules, parameters, approvals, and guidelines for how their expenses are submitted, approved, and then ultimately exported into QuickBooks Online. You're even able to, again, securely integrate with your individual file for that individual client. So you have 10 policies, client A, client B, client C, client D. They're all secure, they're all autonomous from one another, and they all directly integrate with that distinct file from your client into QuickBooks Online. We also pull in all other coding parameters as well. So we pull in categories, customers, projects, jobs, all that good stuff. So your submitters and your admins can check and make sure that all the expenses are coded correctly the first time. We offer full comprehensive training, 3 CPE credits, heavy discounts, and of course, free internal use for you and your team.
Nice. I love it. So Jenny, back to you. You talked to us about the 3 Ps, people, process, platform. How do you balance practice ignition, your practice, and then you have a life? How do you run businesses and have a life?
Lots and lots of coffee. No, I'm just, that, and so I guess the answer would be, having balance is really important in anything that we're doing, whether it's in our personal life or our professional life. And for me, learning that, what that means is, having my own 3 children, starting a practice from scratch, growing it to where it is now, everything stemmed from effective time management. Now, I know a lot of you just rolled your eyes, but really, really thinking about time management from my time being a time bank. Just like we preach budgets to a client, we need to preach to ourselves that we only have so many hours in a day. And how are we going to do that? And by following that triple P approach is how you're going to maximize that.
Pete, if you're a small firm, maybe just starting out, do you really need to document your processes? That is so tedious and time consuming.
Right. Well, the answer, I mean, we've already been stressing it for the past, 30 minutes here, but is absolutely yes. So one of my favorite book recommendations when I first started working with accounting firms was The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And one of your favorites, I understand. And so the book is a parable of sort that gets you to think about your business as a franchise. And so what would a franchisor have in place for you if you bought a franchise? It would be all the manuals and the processes and the tools and the equipment that you would need to have in place, right? And what makes franchises successful is that all of that stuff's been figured out and presented. So if you're starting your firm out, you're sort of building those things and document everything. So that way, then when employees come in, they feel like, oh, this place has got it figured out. I just go to the workflow tool or whatever that's guiding me on how to do that, right? And then the other concept I like to share is the 10X mindset by Dan Sullivan, strategic coach. Check it out. He's got a podcast. It's pretty cool. So this is where you try to imagine what your business would look like if it were 10 times the size it is today. So what people, processes, and platforms would you need if your business was, say, let's say $1 million versus $100,000 a year? So the point of that is that this gets you and your team to think much bigger versus incrementally. And then, you just go around the room and think, okay, what things would we need to have in place, if we're a $1 million firm or a $10 million firm or a $100 million firm? And then you work through all that, how many people, what processes, what platforms, and then it gives you a vision of what you need to put in place. And so most likely, as you go through that, you're going to have documented processes and strategic or standard tech stack and processes and things that you do every month. So why not start doing those, today as opposed to waiting till then? And you'll get to that faster by doing that. So
sounds like a great prompt for brainstorming sessions among the whole team. That's cool. That's a good tip. I'm going to check out that podcast. On E-Myth, you saw me. Yay. That was a great book. Really helpful. And I'll say I read Michael Gerber's original E-Myth. And then also, many of you know Darren Root in our community. He and Michael Gerber wrote the E-Myth for accountants. So check that out because it's really aimed directly at our profession. So thanks, Pete. Okay, so Monty, what tips do you have for businesses that want growth but are maybe experiencing growing pains?
Oof, that's a heavy one. I'll be honest, I'm not going to pretend I have all the answers. I've never owned a business in the traditional sense. In my way, before Expensify, I was a tour manager for metal bands, so not a lot of crossover there. But I can speak to the Expensify methodology. I've been at Expensify for about 4 years, and I think the proof is in our performance and where we've come from and where we are, albeit not in the most traditional way. We're currently one of the highest performing tech companies in the world, and there's only around 100 of us. So when it comes to actual expense processing and expense report management, we operate in every major market and deal in over 200 distinct currencies. So internally, how do we manage this? How do we scale at such a low number and such a high volume? Well, we've built a very, very, very basic process, a very simple workflow that's allowed us to basically scale and attach those best practices to allow us to overcome pretty much any challenge presented to us. It's very simple. There's no secret sauce or revolutionary method behind it. At its core, we tackle every problem, no matter how big, no matter how small, and we write it down as a problem and solution statement. If you can't write it down, you don't understand it. If you don't understand it, well, you can't solve it. At its core, my advice is to not overcomplicate things. Write down the problem, work on the solution with your team, have an open and honest discussion about it, and make a plan to execute said solution. If you always think user, submitter, and client first, the rest will follow.
That's fantastic. So I guess that kind of covers those 3 simple steps. I want to call out that they are simple steps that we went over today, but there was just a ton of information from all of you. Thank you so much. We talked about defining what it is that you sell, what services, pick your tech stack, and then figure out your procedure for how you're going to do it. So 3 simple things, but full of great tips from you guys. I'd like to add, if I may, quick testimonial. I do use all 3 of these apps on this panel every single day. So when Intuit asked me to moderate this panel, I was like, heck yeah, sign me up. So more than happy to be here. And I can genuinely attest that if you're not already using these apps, they will turbo boost you on the way to a scalable firm. And so those are some simple things you can do, is just learn how to use these apps if you don't know them already. These are kind of the top big, most popular apps out there. Lots of them out there, but these are 3 of them. Okay, on that note, I really want to thank you, our panel, for sharing so much today. And I want to thank the audience for listening. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of QuickBooks Connect and enjoy all the rest of your sessions.